So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Abu Ahmed. I'm the Research Service Librarian. I'm just here for a brief workshop. The title of the workshop is Smart Research Starts with Smart Data, the Guide to Research Data Management. So the overview. This is the overview of what we'll be discussing throughout the session. We'll be looking at what is research data, then what is research data management, then why do we need to kind of manage our research. Also, you recall a few months ago, we kind of sent our survey on assessment of research data management in the university. We're going to be sharing the brief report on how it looks like within the campus. We also talk about the research data sharing, as well as how you're able to build your data management plan, as well as try to look at how you could able to put your data set in line with a FAIR principle. So let's start with whenever you start research, there's no way you can do research without the data. So basically, there's a lot of definitions of what the research data is. So basically, research data is, in a layman term, could be just any documented evidence that is collated in response to research questions. So this data could be in a qualitative form, quantitative form, or images, or even a text, as the case may be. So there are a lot of ways that research data could actually come up in terms of the form it comes. So when we are asked what is research data management, that is the first point of call. We need to understand that research data management is about the handling of data before, during, after the final stage of research activities. We all know these research activities. It starts from the process where you conceptualize your idea, to the part where you collect your data, to the part where you organize your data, then to the part you store your data and also document your data. So you look at it, you see that the process of the research data management is just the process where you kind of handle your data throughout the research lifecycle. So when you're talking about research data management also, you need to look at what does it entail. It entails the data management planning, it also entails creating the data, documenting the data, and also storing the data, sharing the data, and also preserving the data. You'll be asking, why do I need to share? Why do I need to manage my data? So one key reason why you need to manage your data is because you need to probably manage your data is to avoid the loss of data. So example of a large data set loss incident is that of the Kyoto University in Japan. As a result of this, over 34 million files from 14 research groups that were generated within 2 days were lost. So this is a very big issue as at then, because what happened was that they were trying to do a kind of system update in their supercomputer, but there were a lot of errors. They could not do a backup. So what happened was that they lost a lot of files. In fact, they have to even invite experts, from the world experts in terms of data retrieval, to see how they could retrieve it. But one of the experts said that it's a pity that they could not retrieve more information, more of those data. So what we're saying is that you could see that for the 3 days that the data that they lost for 34 million files within 14 research group within the 3 days. If this researcher probably had a backup somewhere, they could start. But if you look at it now, because they could not recover this, it means that they have to start probably within that 3 days. They have to do a lot of work to recover the data within the 3 days. So like I said, it's very important we try to see how we could manage our data to avoid data loss. Okay. So we also have a similar issue. There was this particular article, that was published. The title was Growth in the Time of Debt. Now, this article was widely read and also cited. It was very influential. Then, of course, an article of that nature is expected for people to actually reproduce similar articles within some years. 3 years later, two researchers from University of Massachusetts, what they did was trying to reproduce this particular article because of the level of influence the article has. So these researchers actually made a very big discovery when they used the same methodology and spreadsheet, but they discovered that there was a lot of errors in the article. Now, this particular issue sent a lot of great shock in the research ecosystem, because, like I said, this is a groundbreaking findings. So this could also be as a result of proper documentation of the data set. However, the article was retracted. So you see, it's also very important for us to manage our data for proper documentation. Okay, we have this guys. These are faculties. Funny enough, both of them are both of them are anesthesiologists. Both of them, what they do, they are competing for the best author with the highest retracted article. However, both has 184, and Fuji has 168. Both of them. One key thing is that one of the elements during investigation was the data. Now, the committee always discovered that they falsified data, and even the one that was even the one that was not there, they were not complete to draw some conclusion. So what I'm saying in essence is this: is that for these both guys, if they had a data management plan, it would have been much better for them. But during the committee sitting, during the investigation, they realized that even the ones that they have existing data, the data were not that sufficient to draw some conclusions from their findings. So for us not to fall into this particular kind of situation, it's very important for us to put up our data properly so that we'll be able to account for our data. Because a lot of research these days, what normally happens is that it's very good for you to kind of attach your data, because it strengthens your findings. And if you attach your data, nobody gets to you. If they need any clarification, just go to your data or where you've actually probably link your data, probably in a repository or anything. Okay. Another similar issues was during the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a study that drew its samples from 10,000 COVID-19 patients worldwide, and they concluded that chloroquine increases the chances of mortality and health complication. But you see, not quite long, researchers, what they did was they raised concern about the methodology and statistical analysis. And at the end of the day, they realized that the data were incomplete. They have kind of data that were not collected at the end of the day. So they realized that if they put up their data properly, the author could not even kind of the authors could not even kind of pull they couldn't account for even some of the data that they used to draw up the conclusion. So, but if you have your data management plan, you should be able to account for this for your data. So I don't want us to meet ourselves in this particular kind of scenario. Okay. Also, again, there was also a research that made a comparison between articles that are linked to data sets and those ones that are not linked to data sets. So the findings actually say that articles that are linked to data set has significantly high impact, citation impact, especially those ones that have the DOI attached to their data set. So you see, there's reason why we should be able to uh, uh, have a kind of proper data management practice. So again, you realize that these days you see that publishers, journals, and also kind of funders are actually requesting for data availability for people, for authors for authors or researchers to declare their data as well as share their data policy. You understand? So now it has now become a mandatory for them, for authors to kind of, part of requirement for authors to submit how they intend to share their data, in as part of the requirement when submitting their manuscripts. So I did a very quick review on 50 articles that are actually affiliated to UDST. So on Scopus, so I can boldly say that most of these were actually using, most of the authors were actually using, we're also using data will be provided upon request in the data availability statement. In each of these journals, especially journals and publishers now, they have a section called data availability statement where you declare your data. So when I try checking for UDST affiliated, I use like 50, and most of them are saying data will be provided upon request. I think I suggest that we do it more properly. There's nothing wrong in saying that, but it's very important for you to state the reason why the data will be provided upon request. Probably maybe it's on ethical issues, or maybe the data is talking about a human subject. But however, most of this data that I've actually looked at are data that actually deals with secondary data. So I think maybe we should be able to provide reasons why data will be declared upon request. So, if you also observe, most of these journals articles you're saying, you will see that some of them will see data available on their data availability statement section. They will write, they will actually provide a link to a repository where you can see their data, or some will just attach it to the article as a supplementary information. So I think we should also we should also try to see how we could brief that in terms of our data management practice. Okay. Now, like I said, reviewers, when you check most of our funders' requirement for grant proposal, you will see that DMP is part of the evaluation. So what it means is that when you have an inadequate DMP, it could likely actually reduce your chances of winning the grant. We all know that grant is something that is very competitive. So if you do everything possible to make sure that you win the grant, and part of it is trying to look at every field that is mandatory for you. And like I said, DMP now is it's also kind of very important, is mandatory. So a lot of people might actually be lose the grant due to probably don't have a very clear pathway on how they want to on how they want to maintain their data, on how they want to manage their data. So with that, I think we should be able to, because when you go during the evaluation process, they look at it. They look at your DMP. Does it actually align with what the funders want? So these are some of these things we should be looking at. So another research talked about that that once your DMP is very weak, it actually affects the level. It actually weaken a proposal credibility and also affect the funding decision. Now, this is the survey we did months ago about data management survey. So now you can see the divide. You may recall that some few months ago, a survey sent out to assess the level of data management practice in the campus. So it might interest you that the findings of the survey reveals that over 60% of the respondents are not aware of DMP, which is quite strange. So, and the 50% also do not prepare always. 50% of them do not prepare always. Do not always prepare the MP during their research projects. So you see, like I said, we should try to see how we could do, because this result, it shows that at least our practice in terms of data management is a bit fair. So when we ask which area they need training and support, you can see that the areas cut across the entire research data management practice. So from data sharing to fair data principle, to the metadata part, to creating and maintaining your data management, to best practice in terms of organizing, so and so on and so forth. Sorry. Okay, let's start from research data sharing. Now, when you said, what is research data sharing? In a layman term, research data sharing is the practice of making a research data available in a location where it can be easily accessible by other researchers for reusability. Now, let me give example of what it means. A brief example, a scenario, sorry. Now, when you have a nursing research team, probably they conduct a research on a specific topic, on a specific title, let's say effectiveness of diabetes self-management among patients with type 2 diabetes. Now, after that, normally the finding will be published. Then they upload the data set, survey instrument, data documentation, and data documentation into repositories like Manara or Zedo. So what it means is that when those particular documents are being uploaded, other researchers could actually have access to data from the repository to verify the results, the result of the particular research, as well as they can also use the data as a secondary data for further research. So if you must share your data on a particular platform, you must follow the data sharing policy. Data sharing policy of the platform, either it is an institutional repository or journal website or publisher. Okay, let's move on. Now, this is an example of how research data sharing policy looks like. This is for a publisher, Taylor and Francis. So when you look at it, you see that at a point, they're trying to look at what you can do in terms of data availability, in terms of data citation, in terms of level of data sharing, So we as library can be able to assist you in case you need our assistance in terms of probably you need our advice, an expert advice on how you intend to share your data or preserve your data, which repository you want to preserve the data, so we can actually assist you in that. Okay, now let's talk about data management plan. Now, when you see data management plan, it's a formal document that describes how research data will be handled throughout a research project after the project is completed. Now, in this research data management plan, it outlines how data will be collected, how data will be organized, how data will be stored, how data will be protected, how data will be shared, and how data will be preserved to ensure that the data remain secure, accessible, and reusable. Now, the library can assist in terms of developing a DMP, as well as advise you properly in terms of data sharing and preservation. So you can see that we have all the capacity to assist you in advising you properly in that. Now, this is an example of this is a list of a few research funders that require data management plan. Although the list is not exhaustive, these are the ones that I can lay my hands on now, but there are a lot of them. You can see that in terms of data plan, you can see that it has the full coverage. You can see there's full coverage, there's partial coverage, there's no coverage. But you see that for research data management plan, it's a full coverage, which makes it mandatory makes it as a very mandatory requirement for you as a grant, for you writing a grant, for you assessing a grant. It's mandatory for you to have a very clear path on how you intend to declare your data or how you intend to share your data. We also have the popular one we have around ourselves. You can see at the other side, you see that we have the QRDI Research Data Management Plan guidelines, the guidelines on how you what you need to know and whatever you need to know to write a research grant for QRDI. So every particular research funders has its own guidelines on how you should draft your research data management plan, which the QRDI is not an exception. Does this free web-based tool that is called the DMP Online? Now, what DMP Online does is to help researchers to create, manage, and share their data management plan that meets the requirement of research funders, institutions, and it also provide templates from major funding agency. Now, also what it does is this particular DMP Online tool, it has a lot of features, right? It has the features that you can also even incorporate your institutional template DMP template. It also has a kind of it offers kind of guidance and also explain each of the section you need to fill. You understand? And also allow researchers to collaborate in the sense that all the researchers, that all the member of the team can always have access to the DMP and also work on it at the same time. You can also export plans in various format, in PDF format, in Word and stuff like that. One fascinating thing about it is that it supports update of DMP from the beginning to the end of research lifecycle. Now, this is data management. This is all funding, the QRDI funds, especially. So for researchers that are applying for QRD grant, especially the UREP, I know you know that DMP is one of the requirements when submitting your proposal. So in case you need help, the library is always there. We're always happy to help. So, and also you can click the down parts and see how the QRDI template looks like. So in case you need probably more, you need more explanation or you need a guidance, we are always happy to help here at the Scholarly Com of the Library Directorate. So like I said earlier, every research funders has research data management plan guidelines. So you can see what areas you need to cover when developing your research data management plan for the QRDI. Okay, let's talk about the file organization, which is one of the very important aspects in terms of data management practice. Yeah, so the file structure. When you talk about file structure, is the organized arrangement of folders, subfolders, and file within a project to ensure that data, document, and other project material are easy to find, manage, and share. So from the screenshot, you will see how well structured the file is. Each of the folder name with the content inside the folder. For example, when you look at the project folder, you see the README is an attached to the folder, but you see that the data has two in the data it has two sub folder, and the two sub folder, it contains what is in the two sub folder also have the content. For example, when you look at the raw data, you look at the data, you see the subfolder is raw data and processed data. So the essence of the file structure is that whatever your file structure should be able to kind of give an idea of what is in the content. So that is what file structure is. Now, the file name convention. A file name is a kind of framework commonly used to describe what they contain and how it relates to the file. So how do you achieve that? First, use meaningful and descriptive names. For example, you can see from the example you can see NHI project, or probably you're working you are working on a particular topic on like I said the other time, effectiveness of diabetes self management. So you can use word like diabetes. You can use the word like diabetes. You also include the dates in a consistent format, the normal format, the ISO recommended format, which is the year comes before the month and the dates. Then if you have a version, you also indicate what version it is. Then also, but basically try to avoid spaces and characters when you are making names. The best bet for you is you can use underscore or hyphen, but instead of space. Then ensure you keep the names concise but also informative, so that from the name you've generated, everyone can be able to understand the content of the folder. Yeah. Data security. Okay. Data security, it's all about measures, policy and procedure you take to protect research data from unauthorized users throughout the life cycle of the research. So when you talk about confidentiality, but before you talk about confidentiality, a researcher conducting a study probably on the patient with diabetes can actually store participant records in a password protected database. For example, when you provide a patient records, a participant records in a password protected database, what it means is that only approved members, of the research team can actually have access to the data. So we also look at another part which is very, very important in terms of data security is the integrity. Now, for the integrity is very important. It is very important for a researcher to maintain an original copy of survey data and records, all cleaning and analyze steps. All the cleaning and also you analyze the steps. Now, this is because with this, it will actually prevent accidental modification of raw data and also ensure that your research's findings are based on accurate information. So also, another point is in terms of data security is the availability. Research data are stored on a secure institutional server and also backup regularly for class. So that in case anything happened, like for example, I told you about the incident of the Kyoto University in Japan. If there was a backup somewhere by the researchers, the data can still be accessed and recovered, even not all, but at least a good chunk of it could have been recovered. Okay, the storage and backup. Now, during the project, before you store your data, there are questions you should ask yourself. Are your data sensitive? Because does your data contain information that requires protection due to probably ethical or legal issue or even privacy issue? Because one thing you should understand is that the more sensitive your data is, the stronger the security measure you will need. Probably the data that's one of your data could be on human subject, which example could be patient health records. These are sensitive data. So when you have sensitive data like that, you will require a very much stronger security measure to ensure that you protect the privacy of the patients. Another part is how much data do you anticipate generating? Because the larger your data, I can bet you the larger data you have or small actually influence your storage cost as well as your backup requirement as well as the long-term preservation of the data. So if you have a big data that runs into several terabytes, like probably an imaging data. So what it means is that you have to have a very big storage cost, as well as the backup requirement, as well as the long-term preservation. Also, what types of active data storage environment do you need? These are also a very important thing. So you can choose a storage solution that matches your project requirements. So when you have a large data, it means that a storage solution will be a bigger one or something like that. You also institute a backup plan. So when instituting a backup plan, all you need to do is to create a kind of strategy that protects, so that it will protect data loss and corruption or theft or even system failure. So now, but the most common part of backup strategy is the 3-2-1. Now, what the 3-2-1 does is that you have 3 copies. You store 2 of your document, of your data, in 2 different major storage system, and the one also, and you store 1 in an offsite storage system. That makes it 3. So this is a very recognized basic practice. They call it 3-2-1. Metadata. Now, commonly people say, what is metadata? They say, okay, metadata is the data inside a data, but however you define metadata, metadata has a kind of 3 types, we have the descriptive metadata. Now, what the descriptive metadata does is to inform, is to provide information that helps identify, discover, and also understand a particular data set. Then we also have the structural metadata. Now, this metadata, what it does is to show relationship between data sets. So you can see why you talk about chapter, page order, and section, because what it shows the relationship that linked the data set together. We also have the administrative metadata, which what it does, administrative metadata, is an information that you use to manage, preserve, and also control access to data. So, okay. We have, let's talk about documentation. So when you talk about documentation is just a way of, I know these things are not new to you guys. So documentation, it's kind of provide detailed explanation that helps other users of data to be able to comprehend how it's collected, processed, analyzed, and organized. So one deep example of documentation is the README file. So in README, what README does is that in README, you will find a kind of information that relates to data that is more detailed than just the normal description you find in metadata. Like I said, metadata is a description also, but not as detailed as the README. Because in README, you'll find a kind of information like the name of the project, the brief description of the project, the data set, the scope of the study, the purpose of the study, that the method of data collection, and many others. So basically what README does is to improve the fair data principle. This is fair data principle. Now, in fair data principle, when you're talking about fair data principle, you say fair data principle is a kind of set of guidelines that ensure research data are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Now, thereby increasing the value and impact of your research data. We all acknowledge the fact that what you want your research data to have value, and also impact, so that you can be able to have a lot of citation, and also visibility. Now, when you're talking about fair data principle, the key question you should ask yourself is that can your data be findable? Can your data be accessible? Can your data work with other systems and data set in terms of interoperability? Can other researcher understand and also reuse your data? These are questions you should ask yourself. If not, then how can you make your data be fair? So making your data be fair starts with assigning a DOI to your data. When you assign a DOI, that is digital persistence unified. You assign a DOI to your data. You ensure that you ensure that you have a rich metadata. And also ensure that you register your data in a searchable repository like Manara. I've never seen a system, a repository that has a lot of features like Manara. So please, in case you need, if you have not registered on the repository, please kindly reach out to my sister, my colleague, Dania. She's a repository librarian. Reach out to her. She'll register you because the repository is very effective and trustworthy. Bet me, that's true. So with this, your data can be findable. When you assign a DOI to your data, you also have a very rich metadata that describe your data, and also you register your data in a very searchable repository. That makes your data findable. The next is this: if a data is findable, how do you access this data? So accessing the data, for your data to be accessible, your data should be retrievable using a standardized protocol. A standardized protocol, your metadata should also remain available even if the data is no longer available. Do you understand? The access condition should also be clearly stated. So with that, anyone can access your data anywhere around the world. So you look at also use standard file in terms of interoperability also. How would your data relate with each other and other data sets or other systems? The first thing you need to do is to use a standard file format. Also you can also use standardized vocabularies, and also metadata standards. So with this, you'll be able to integrate your data set with other data sets. So, and again, how do you make your data reusable? Ensure you provide a clear information on the usage of the data in terms of the license, in terms of how the metadata meets the domain relevant community standard, and so on and so forth. Let's talk about preservation. Yeah, let's talk about preservation. So when you're talking about preservation in terms of research data management, it starts at the point of data management plan. So during the data management, when you're preparing your data management plan, you should address the following questions. What are these questions you should avoid? Mind you, not all research data needs to be preserved indefinitely. Researchers should identify which data have long value and should be retained. So you could want to preserve your data repository. You could want to preserve your data in a repository, in an archive or storage system that will provide long value. However, the most important thing is that know the data you want to preserve. Not all data have long preservation. For example, you have drafts. You have a lot of drafts. The final draft, should be able to be in the longer in the long-term preservation, because it has long-term preservation value. Okay, The next one is, will you need to restrict access to data or place an embargo on access to data after you have deposited it in a data repository? So when you look at that from that angle, for example, of course, there are a lot of data that have restriction, even though when you deposit it in the repository, but not when the data has a restriction, of course, the metadata will be stated clearly and will be visible, but not everybody can freely download or view them due to probably some ethical concerns, and also if you have a data that has an embargo period also, that data will be visible, but you cannot be able to download it until the expiration of the embargo period. So another thing again is what kind of repository you want to preserve your data. Now, when you're talking about repository you want to preserve your data, you need to consider some certain factors. What are these factors? What are these factors you should address? Does it provide long-term preservation? The repository you want to store your data? Does it assign a DOI or other persistence identifier? Is it trustworthy by the research community? Like I said, I told you about Minera. It's trustworthy. It's very good. It has all the features that you need. It has all the features that I'm just naming. I'm listing now. Does it support your data type and file format? Does it allow open, restricted, or kind of embargo access? Does it comply with funders' institutional requirements and also the publisher's requirements and journal requirements? So these are things we should look at before we decide which of the journal, or before we decide which of the repository we want to preserve your data. Okay, these are some repositories. The list are not exhaustive. These are repositories that you could use, and also Manara. Thank you so much. Any question, please? Question time.
Thank you very much for that session, Dr. Ahmed. Appreciate your insights in this subject matter, and I'm sure lots of faculty will be reaching out to you for one-on-one support, which of course we're always happy to give. I've put in the chat a feedback survey. I would appreciate if anyone could give comments on, and while you're thinking up any questions to ask, I appreciate all of your time as well. Yes, if you have any questions for Dr. Ahmed, please. Otherwise, thank you for attending. There are no questions. Give me back your day. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone.